The Midnight Bride. An eerie tale, inspired by Korean folklore. Prologue. The invitation. It all started with a simple invitation. Jihoon was a curious soul, always drawn to places and stories that others avoided. Beneath that curiosity lurked an emptiness, a gnawing loneliness he never admitted even to himself. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled like distant drums, he received an anonymous message on his phone. Attend the midnight wedding at Yeonghwa Village. Witness what the living should never see. The message was unsigned, but it stirred something inside him, blend of curiosity and dread, like the faint prickling of goosebumps before a storm. Why me? Jihoon wondered, staring at the message. His heart thudded with a strange rhythm, a mix of fear and thrill. Maybe it was boredom, maybe the ache to escape his mundane routine, but something compelled him to go. Chapter 1. The Arrival. The next morning, Jihoon packed lightly and set out on his journey. The further he drove from the bustling city, the more the landscape transformed. Towering skyscrapers gave way to dense forests, the roads narrowing into winding paths that seemed to lead nowhere. By dusk, he arrived at Yeonghwa Village, hidden deep within the mist-shrouded mountains of South Korea. Mist slithered through the dense pine forest, wrapping around crumbling houses like ghostly fingers. The scent of damp earth mingled with decaying wood and the faint, metallic tang of rust. The air felt unnervingly still, thick with the weight of forgotten memories. His footsteps echoed as he walked down the empty street, the crunch of gravel beneath his shoes the only sound. Why does this place feel like it's been waiting for me? Faint whispers seemed to ride the wind, elusive yet persistent, like voices just beyond comprehension. Jihoon brushed off the chill creeping up his spine, blaming the cold mountain air. Chapter 2. The Village that time forgot. Yeonghwa Village appeared untouched by time. Ancient hanok houses with faded, peeling paint leaned against each other like weary guardians. Paper windows hung in tatters, fluttering weakly despite the absence of a breeze. The air felt colder here, as if the village had been drained of warmth long ago. Jihoon's chest tightened with an inexplicable sense of dread. This place feels wrong, he thought, but he pressed on, convincing himself it was just his imagination. As night fell, the village transformed. Red lanterns flickered to life along the narrow streets, their dim glow casting long, distorted shadows that danced with a life of their own. Jihoon noticed a group of villagers dressed in traditional hanbok, their garments faded and threadbare. Their faces were hidden behind white mourning masks, emotionless and hollow. They moved silently, their footsteps making no sound against the cobblestone path. An old man, his face wrinkled like dried parchment, approached Jihoon. His hollow eyes held no warmth, only a depthless void. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves scraping against stone. "But since you are, remember this. Do not look into her eyes." Jihoon's stomach knotted. What the hell does that mean? He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, he found himself following the villagers, his legs moving as if not entirely under his control. Chapter 3. The Midnight Wedding. They led him to an ancient pavilion, surrounded by a circle of candles. The flames flickered weakly, casting an otherworldly glow on the cracked wooden beams. At the center stood the bride draped in a crimson hanbok with intricate gold embroidery that shimmered like veins of blood. Her face was hidden behind a delicate white veil, her posture unnervingly still, as if carved from marble. The legend of Yeonghwa Village whispered of the Gaksi, the ghost bride's spirit condemned to wander between worlds after dying on her wedding day, betrayed by a lover who never showed. Her grief twisted into rage, binding her soul to the mortal plane. The villagers, cursed by her wrath, performed midnight weddings to appease her, offering strangers as symbolic grooms to keep her satisfied. Jihoon felt his breath hitch. Why am I here? His heart pounded, but he couldn't look away. The ceremony began in utter silence. No words were spoken, only the eerie, rhythmic beat of a shaman's drum, echoing into the night like a heartbeat from another realm. The sound seemed to vibrate through his chest, syncing with his own erratic pulse. His curiosity overpowered his fear. He edged closer, drawn to the figure like a moth to flame, trying to glimpse the bride's face. Maybe it's just a strange local ritual. Nothing supernatural, he told himself, even as the hairs on his neck stood on end. The moment he did, A chill surged through his body, sinking deep into his bones. Her eyes, they weren't human. Black, bottomless voids that seemed to pull at his soul, filled with ancient sorrow and an abyss of rage. Jihoon stumbled back, his breath hitching in his throat. No, this isn't real. But it was too late. Their gazes had locked. Suddenly, he was no longer in the pavilion. The world twisted, the ground beneath him morphing into shadows. Jihoon found himself standing in a mirror version of the village, identical, yet grotesquely distorted. The houses leaned impossibly inward, the sky a static, starless void. Chapter 4. The Curse of the Bride. The villagers, now monstrous figures with elongated limbs and hollow eyes, surrounded him. Their whispers grew louder, overlapping until they formed words that clawed at his sanity. You saw her. Now you belong to her. Jihoon fled, his heart pounding like a war drum. Fear clawed at his mind, more primal than anything he'd ever known. I have to get out. I have to get out. But every path led back to the pavilion where the bride waited, her veil now gone, revealing a face both beautiful and horrific, skin pale as moonlight, lips stained crimson like fresh blood, her black eyes swallowing the flickering candlelight. Each time he turned away, reality fractured further. His reflection appeared in broken windows, distorted and grinning back at him even when he wasn't. Time unraveled. He saw himself running, again and again, like a loop he couldn't escape. She's in my head, Jihoon realized, his panic rising like bile in his throat. She's not just here, she's inside me. Chapter 5. The Endless Haunting. Jihoon woke up in his apartment suite, trembling, but nothing was the same. Shadows moved on their own, whispers echoed from empty rooms, and his reflection blinked when he didn't. The bride's voice whispered in the dark corners, "You cannot leave me." Desperate, Jihoon sought out shamans and exorcists. None could help. They all said the same thing, their faces pale with fear. You should never have met her gaze. His nights were filled with nightmares of the bride, standing at the foot of his bed, her black eyes watching with eternal hunger. She never moved. She never spoke. She simply waited, her presence as suffocating as the darkness itself. Jihoon's mind unraveled slowly, like threads pulled from a frayed cloth. He grew paranoid, seeing her in the corners of rooms, reflected in windows, lurking in shadows. The world around him became a blur of fear and hallucination. The cold followed him everywhere, even in the heat of summer. He realized the truth. The bride didn't want to kill him. She wanted to keep him. Forever. Epilogue. The Forgotten Soul. Jihoon disappeared without a trace. His apartment was found abandoned, the walls covered in cryptic symbols etched deep into the plaster, written in his own trembling handwriting. The mirrors were shattered, shards scattered like fallen stars across the dusty floor. But sometimes, people claim they see him, a man with hollow eyes, wandering near Yeonghwa Village, his face pale as ash, murmuring to someone only he can see. Still searching for a way to escape the bride's eternal gaze.